Hi, welcome. In this video, I'm going to review 2021, the Red Camera 2021. Now, some eagle-eye viewers may have noticed that I've changed the name of the channel. It was appropriately set up because of my Nikon D3200 in a fabulous red glowing, and spur of the moment thing. I thought, you know what, let's call it the red camera, because that's what it is. Three things have happened. I've met people out and about during the course of the last year where I've been creating my videos and tried to direct these people I've met to my channel. Oh, you do a YouTube channel. What's the name? The Red Camera. People can't find it, and that's specifically because there is a cinematography camera called Red. I think it's called Red. It might be called Red Camera. Picture of it here. Now, when people search the Red Camera, this is the thing they find. I spoke with a friend of mine, Mark. You may remember Mark from two videos. A couple of links here. Sorry, there. I get my hands all wrong. Mark said to me he was trying to get someone to look at my YouTube channel, not his, mine, based on the fact that he'd done a couple of videos with me. And he also said, oh, it's called the Red Camera. And these friends of his came back to him and said, we couldn't find it. All we could see was these movie cameras. So the Red Camera, for what it was worth, actually kind of defeats the object. And that's the third reason. I won't have that camera forever. I'm going to upgrade. I'm going to have something different. And for all intents and purposes, whenever you get a camera, it's primarily going to be the one that you use most of the time. So as and when I change, I don't think I'll have a Red Camera. The channel name becomes redundant. So I thought, what best way to name the channel? I am Tudor Smith and I'm doing photography. Seems the logical answer, doesn't it? Tudor Smith Photography. I could call it Tudor Smith, but I have my own personal channel called Tudor Smith, and I do all my sort of vlogging on daily life, things that interest me, my music. So anyway, back to the reason for this video. I thought what I would do is a quick review from January through December, looking at what videos I released, and also show a couple of the photographs that I thought, this is really showing how your skills are improving, how you're adapting, how you're using your ISO, how you're using aperture, shutter, priority, and silly things like panos, learning how to take 2 or 3 shots and then process them together. So with that, let's have a look at a chronological order, and here we go. So in January, I went out to the White Cliffs of Dover and I set up these 2 videos, the White Cliffs of Dover Part 1 and Part 2. Now I had a lot of fun with these, primarily because I was just at the stage where I was learning how to use aperture priority. And I took this picture, which I thought it kind of encapsulated, it's kind of a landscape. It's got a bit of the sea. I was learning about thirds, so where do I set the thirds? And I had the sea on the right-hand third and the cliffs on the first and second third. Then I took this shot and I thought, oh yeah, I've got to capture that because these cliffs are eroding. So for nothing else, it was an eroding cliff shot. Come February, we had snow, and I released 3 videos in that period, 2 pertaining to snow and 1 where I was trying to capture a sunrise at the White Cliffs. But I captured this shot. I thought, oh, that's a lovely shot. The Lidden Bell, a little pub down the lane from me, kind of quintessentially English, but with the snow. It's quite nice. Then I headed over to one of my favourite windmills. I loved this shot. It was cold, bitterly cold, wind chill factor -1,000,000, just freezing. But I've placed a windmill in the first third. I like to think the first third, and with those blue skies and the snow in the field. It's just a lovely shot. So in the next video, I went out and try to capture some sunrises, and I took a lot of photographs. You kind of have to watch the video for that. But I saw this. I was setting up for a shot, and I saw the vapor trails and the different hues in the sky. I thought, oh, that's great. So without doing any setting up, I just kind of snapped it with an aperture of about f10, f16, anything between there, I can't quite remember, and let the camera do the rest of it. And it just came out lovely. I really liked that. March came along, and again I was doing some more sunsets, and I thought to myself, I'll get out and see if I can capture the rays of the sun. And it was the lighthouse that got me, the way it was shining on there. Now I took two shots. I took this one of the sun going down, and I thought, well, there's really nothing along this. And that's par for the course with my photography. I'll go out not knowing what I'm going to take a picture of. I'm just going to take a picture. And I caught these radio masts with the sun going down, kind of placed them in what I thought was a nice shot. And then there's the South Foreland Lighthouse. And I loved the way the sun was just shining on the left-hand side of the lighthouse. Clear blue sky. Okay, April saw me experimenting. I did 3 videos in April. One was scouting locations, one was experimenting with ND filters, and one was all about bracketing. But I also caught some sunsets, and also used the ND filter. So down on the beach, I had the tripod set up, I had my variable ND filter, and I was basically doing long exposure. And the idea was to capture the waves as they were receding, and it gave me this lovely swirly water shapes around the rocks that were sitting in the sand. So I went to Reculver to do the same thing. I caught some long exposures with the ND, but the sun was going down. I thought, you know what, I've got to do some bracketing, learn some bracketing. Now, bracketing is taking a series of shots from a dark exposure to a light exposure, and then in post-processing, merging them together so that we can highlight the foreground and bring out the lightness of the foreground using the light exposure, and also don't lose the background. So I caught the sun going down, excuse me. In May, I was very active in May. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 videos went out in May. I did 3 in a series of night photography. I wanted to capture trail lights and motorway lights, that kind of thing. I wanted to experiment with shutter priority. So I went over to Headcorn Aerodrome, see if I could catch some aeroplanes and keep the propellers in motion. I did a trek out to Chatham, again using long exposure, but I wanted to again try bracketing, so that came into the fore. I did a short video for a release for a driving school, took some shots of their car, and then my friend Mark came over so that we could discuss the differences between DSLR and mirrorless cameras. So for the May shots, we have the trail lights first of all, up on the motorway, long exposure, just leaving the lens, leaving the shutter open for a short burst, aperture really tight so that I could get the starburst on the lights. I then went over to Dover Castle, experienced the same thing again, leave the shutter open and allow the vehicles to drive up or down the road, giving me that trail light. And then I went over to, where was that, Viking Bay in Broadstairs. There wasn't a lot of trail light activity on that one, but what I did do was probably my first panorama. This is a 3-shot panorama with long exposure. I didn't realise actually, because the kind of lights going across the top of the cliff would be moving, that long exposure would capture that. So all of those lights are all a bit busy and a bit movie. But the waves, on the other hand, it kind of looks a little smooth because of the long exposure technique. So that was good. Over at Headcorn, I caught this Harvard trainer taking off. And I was panning with the aeroplane as it was taking off. So we had a shutter speed of 1/20th, maybe 1/30th of a second. I was trying it at really fast shutter speed, but of course it wasn't giving me the motion in the propeller. So dropping it down, I learnt that I can capture the motion, panning with the subject and taking a photograph. Over at Chatham, again using an ND filter, I took a 4-second exposure. I really like this picture. For whatever reason, it makes me think cosmopolitan. The skyscrapers, the quay, the sky. What I am thinking is like Geneva or somewhere, but it's just, you know, little old Chatham up the road. Right, what did we do in June? In June, I only released 2 videos. I did some motorsport photography, and then I did my panoramas. Now for the motorsport, it really was again a case of motion and tracking. And what I was trying to do was try and get the vehicle to be still, but to have the wheels blurred because the vehicle is in motion, and also to have the background blurred. And that kind of worked. I was using the correct speed settings for that. So again, really sort of learning more and more about what I'm supposed to be doing here. Panoramas, this was really exciting because I went out to my local countryside and I snapped quite a few, but the idea was that because of my computer setup with 2 monitors, and I use Windows, I could stretch a panoramic image across 2 monitors. So instead of having the same picture displayed on 2 monitors, it's 1 picture panned across. July, I chased castles and I did some long exposure down by the seaside, and then my friend Mark set me a challenge to take a 35mm camera with black and white film and go out and use it up and you know, come away from the digital age and go into retro. So for the castle photography, we're going to go through quickly. I visited numerous castles in Kent. The idea was that I was going to see if I could create a calendar for any particular year. So I took shots of Bodiam Castle, Chiddingstone, Dover Castle, it was misty, Hever Castle, Leeds Castle, again utilising my newly found skill at panoramas and stitching images together, Lymm Castle, which had a lovely Roman fort at the beginning, in front of it, Rochester Castle, Scotney Castle, which was lovely, Sissinghurst Castle, Tunbridge Castle, Upnor Castle and Walmer Castle. So yeah, the chasing castles was a really fun exercise, and because it was so long I had to split it over 2 videos. I then did the fine art long exposure. Just 1 shot jumps out here. Long exposure using the ND filter and just letting it run for 20 seconds, 25 seconds. I love what it does to the horizon because it just makes it a flat line, and you would normally be looking across at you know, the horizon on the sea and have kind of small crests of waves or, you know, any kind of object, a boat or whatever. But because of the long exposure, it just loses everything. Oh, I love this picture. And this picture, someone asked, do you sell prints? And then with Mark's challenge, this is the sort of pick of the pops, as it were, is a little back alleyway down in Canterbury. And it kind of looks period because it's black and white. And I think because I'm using 35mm and an old camera, it's period anyway. This is a shot that I took because, as I mentioned before on my other channel, my Tudor Smith channel, I go out and do videos based on, oh, that would interest me. And I did a video on megalithic structures, and there are quite a few dotted around Kent. And I caught this, which is Kit Cotty's house, it's what it's called. I love just going out, taking photographs. It's so much fun. August, August I went to Wales, but before I went to Wales I went down to the Dover coast just to capture some wave shots, and they came out quite well. It was using a high speed shutter priority. I really wanted to capture the foam and the spray in the waves just as they crashed against the harbour arm there. And then as I panned the camera around, I could see Shakespeare Cliff and the waves were rolling in. And the beauty of this time of year, the sun is so high, it changes the colour of the water as well. I then went to Wales and I got a couple of shots that I was pleased with. I visited the lonely tree in Llanberis, and I've seen pictures of this tree and they're always depicted in sunlight with the mountains in the background. It was pouring with rain that day. Oh dear. And I was on a tight schedule, so you work with what you've got. And I ended up taking this with the mist. Long exposure on an ND filter, but it didn't turn out too badly, I'm pleased to say. I then did quite a bit of driving, but I was going to go up to Snowdon, but time didn't allow. But just at the foot of Snowdon, just past Penny Pass, there's a parking lay-by and you can park up. And I captured this panorama. I thought, oh, beautiful, beautiful countryside. Wales was a blast, but I overcommitted myself to it. September, I did 3 videos. The sunflowers were out in the local field, so I caught them. I headed down to Kersney Abbey. I wanted to experiment with flowing water and long exposures. And then we had the harvest moon, and I just had to try and capture. I don't really do astrophotography or even lunar photography because I haven't worked out the settings, to be quite honest. That's something for 2022. I took quite a series of sunflower shots, but the one that stood out to me, probably because of the colour, well, there was this one, and then I noticed just to the right we had these purple flowers popping up, and as I walked to those 2 flowers on the right, I captured this, and I used a short depth of field, focusing in on the primarily 3 sunflowers with their backs to me. So I was learning at this point how to use depth of field and opening that aperture, focusing on the subject, allowing me to blur out certain parts of an image. And then in Kersney Abbey, I was just following my nose for the water. And you can see in this shot, I captured the water flowing out from the lake, and it was cascading over these kind of remnants of the old abbey. But this one I particularly liked. It has a little bridge with the weir coming in under the bridge. And it was only a short exposure, probably about 2 seconds, maybe 3 max. And then finally with the harvest moon, I managed to capture 1 shot that I was very happy with. I had to leave that exposure open, but of course what it meant was that the boats on the water were slightly blurred because it was movement. In October I released 4 videos, one on woodland macro photography, just my local woods. I decided I would do another black and white photo session, but this time using a DSLR and not the 35mm. And then I went up to Derbyshire for a couple of days. I was hoping to capture the autumn colours, but autumn was really late this year, or last year, so that didn't work. So for the macro photography, I caught a shot of some leaves and I caught a lovely butterfly. So it was kind of a good experience. It was all about depth of field and using a telephoto lens, in this case my Nikon 18-140. I could zoom in at 80mm, 100mm and be very close to the subject but have the aperture open, and that would give me the blur effect. So for the black and white video, it wasn't really an exercise in using photography skills. It was more, can I compose an image regardless of whether I'm using aperture or shutter priority. I took a nice shot of the statue from Anthony Gormley. I saw this shot through the bench tables. I thought, well, that looks quite arty. And then my first soiree into street photography, there was a local artist doing some painting. And I said to him, do you mind if I take a picture of you? said, yeah, go for it. It was very, you know, and we are allowed to take street photographs. Watch out for a forthcoming video. Right, what did we do in November? I did 2 videos in November, 3 videos in November. I did kit lenses. Are they any good? Are they? Really? I just wanted to have sort of in my mind that if I only had an SLR with an 18 to 55 kit lens, could I take photographs that were worthy, you know? And actually you can, I discovered in this video. My friend Mark and I set ourselves a little challenge, and we went out to Whitstable and we took numerous shots, and then I went up to Summerhouse Hill in Folkestone just to take some panoramic shots around. This shot is from the kit lens. I was quite happy with that. It's just a 2-shot panorama. Whitstable was rather enchanting. I caught the old Neptune with the sun going down. Oh, I just love this shot, especially with the moon, the crescent moon. But this is my favourite. There was a wedding going on as we were by the Lobster Shack, and across on the quay, the photographer and videographer had taken the bride and groom over just to take some personal shots or fun shots. And as I panned my camera around, the groom was lifting the bride up, and I thought, oh snap, moment in time. Perhaps my favourite picture of the year, and it's not even a landscape photograph. Having said that, I'm quite happy with the pictures I've taken this year. They've not been bad. Derbyshire was a bit of a disappointment. I did take a nice shot of this copse of trees on a hill. I always love this coming out of the back end of Matlock as you drive towards Bakewell. Chatsworth House, well, you know, there's not a lot you can take there. I got a shot of the house with the trees in the background and the bridge leading over, but I did go up to Winnet's Pass, and I've always wanted to take a shot of Winnet's Pass as the sun is rising. Because this was my first experience of Winnet's Pass with the sun rising, I actually didn't know where to stand and where to take the best composition. But all in all, the experience of being there and taking the shot, I was quite happy with that. Now, I did say I did the landscape on Summerhouse Hill. I went up there and I did a couple of panos with the low sun casting the tree shadows across the fields and the edge of Summerhouse Hill. I particularly like that. But this was the objective, the edge of the North Downs, giving the undulated edges of the plateau dropping down into the basin, if you like, the fields. And then finally for December, I did a part 1 and part 2 in a series of 3 videos that I want to do. There's another one coming very soon. And this was Shoot What You See. The idea being, what happens if you just go out? Sometimes you see some amazing sights, unpre-planned. Just go to a location, take your camera, see if you can take some shots. And I was quite happy with that. For the countryside video, it was more or less just, again, a walk around my local countryside. Took some nice shots in the woods. The Winchelsea shots, however, they're not bad at all. But I got a nice shot of the Strand Gate and the New Gate, which was the only entrance into Winchelsea, and also managed to capture just a few of these shots. This is kind of what I'm saying in terms of shoot what you see. Just go out and see if you can get a nice shot without pre-planning it. So there you go. That's me in a year. and it's great because I've been out. I now know how to do aperture priority, shutter priority. And it's all a case of, I want to say suck it and see. It's experience. It's just doing it and learning it. So the channel is no longer called The Red Camera. It's just going to be Tudor Smith Photography. And we'll see what 2022 can bring. Indeed. Well, thanks for watching. See you in another video. Bye for now.